Hello, everybody. This is Santa, and this is my very first video on my own channel, and I want to thank you for coming. Last night, I was on a live stream with a magic maker and his daughter Vega on his channel, Reimagining Star Wars, and we discussed the 5 concerns that I have for the Rise of Skywalker and how the fan base can be reconciled. As we discussed these 5 concerns, we believe that if those are touched on in the last movie, that at least part of the fans that have been disenfranchised or dissatisfied with the sequel trilogy to this point would be brought back into the fandom in a positive manner. So this video was prompted by a video I watched of John Campea, and he went through his 5 concerns. And as I developed these, it seemed like these would be things that would help the fandom as a whole. So the first concern that I have, and this comes from discussing with many folks what they think of the movies to this point, especially The Last Jedi, but also The Phantom Menace, is continuity of the villain. We're aware that Palpatine is coming back as the primary villain in Episode 9, and we've had no lead up to this. The last time we saw Palpatine was he was thrown down a shaft and presumably to his end. And similar to the end of Solo, when Maul appears, the last time that folks saw him was going down the shaft, cut in half from the prequel trilogy. And I know that I got lots of questions on, wait a minute, I thought this guy was dead. Is that the same guy? What's going on? For the most part, fans of Star Wars, just the movies, which is the bulk of the audience, are not aware that Palpatine has any possibility of being alive, and him coming back in this movie, especially if it's in a physical form, which we believe it is, needs some explanation. So in order for this film to feel like it's got some continuity to the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, we feel like there needs to be some continuity, something explained that ties these things together. The second point that I have is continuity of the heroes. In the prequels, we established who Obi-Wan was as a mentor to Anakin, and we see Anakin rise in power as he matures, and then we see him fall at the very end of the prequels and become Darth Vader. And then in the original trilogy, we have, of course, the rise of Luke Skywalker, and he is brought in as the main hero, and at the end, we see Anakin redeemed. And overall, the trilogies to this point, the saga to this point, has had an overarching theme of the rise and fall and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. In the sequel trilogy, we see Rey rise up, and we see Luke at a fallen point, if you would, at a point where he's removed himself from the Force. He's shut himself off from the Force, and he's gone away on a secluded island to be cut off. And we see him then brought back, and at the end of the movie, he becomes one with the cosmic force. And so we see the fall and ascension of Luke Skywalker. For Episode 9, these heroes, we need to feel like there's something that ties Rey in to the saga. There's an obvious connection between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and then Anakin to Luke, and then we've got this separation, if you will, of where Rey falls into the story, and we need to feel like she somehow fits in. For for my own perspective, and I think in talking to a great number of fans, Anakin would be the best character to pull all of this together. It's our desire, at least my desire, to see Anakin somehow involved in a substantial way that he would help tie this movie, this franchise together. We've got Palpatine as the primary villain. Or if we end up with Anakin involved, at least in some manner, some connection to the ending of the saga, that would help tie it together and add continuity. The third concern also is the theme of continuity, are the new characters. Rey and Ben or Kylo have been central figures to this trilogy to this point, and there's very little connecting them back to the saga. If we watch all 6 movies together and throw in Rogue One into that, their characters, Rey and Kylo, are new. We see Kylo connected through Leia and Han, of course, but even that, we're missing a big part of the story. We only have bits and glimpses of what happened through his training, his fall, and the struggles that he had with Luke and his parents. And then Rey, of course, is brand new. She has no connection to the prior movies at all. And again, here it feels like there needs to be something that pulls her in. For me personally, I feel like the best connection to do that would be to have her as a clone or a creation, something generated in a lab that Palpatine had hidden away, and that she is somehow connected because she was created through the dark side, through Palpatine's program, and came to power in that way. We don't know necessarily where her lineage would come from, but it's possible she could be connected to the Skywalkers through some DNA from Anakin or Luke, or she could be a descendant of some other characters. I personally am in favor of her being some combination of genetic mutation that Palpatine put together, and that holds true with her being Rey. That is nobody. Her parents truly are nobody. She was created, and she would not have a traditional sense of a mother or a father. And then we could find out who those characters were, who the people were who dropped her off on Jakku at the beginning of The Force Awakens. So we need to see these new characters tied in a significant way, especially Rey. The fourth point is continuity of the legacy characters that are being brought in. So we know that Leia, Lando, Chewie, C-3PO, and R2-D2 are being brought back, but they need to feel like they fit in a way that is meaningful, that adds continuity to the overall story as it plays itself out. To this point, we haven't seen Lando in some time, and here he shows up again. We just need that connective tissue that helps bring it in a way that is meaningful, and it doesn't seem forced or trivial, something that makes a real contribution to how the movie plays itself out. And lastly, we need continuity in the saga story as a whole. Most people have an impression, and it feels very much like The Force Awakens was a soft reboot of the franchise. It hit many of the same sort of story beats as A New Hope, and it felt like this is a soft reboot with some of the legacy characters kind of mixed in just to add a little bit of flavor. But the continuity of the story, the rise, the fall, the redemption of Anakin Skywalker, uh, the control of the Emperor, the rise of Palpatine to power, becoming the Emperor, and then his demise or supposed demise. Those things seem to have ended in Return of the Jedi. And if this sequel trilogy is going to feel like it belongs as part of the overarching story, this saga story, one story, we need to have some connective tissue that brings it in as well. Otherwise, there's still going to be that bit of difference between that story that I just mentioned and this sequel trilogy that seems like a soft reboot. So if they can bring that in, if they can bring in the villain, the heroes, the new characters, the legacy characters, and the saga story into one cohesive arc to make it feel like it's one big saga, then we believe that that will help heal the fan base. In addition, I would just like to add, if folks can moderate their expectations, don't come in expecting that all of these beats are going to be hit. Maybe none of them would be hit. And come in with a positive attitude. Come in with something, a hopeful attitude. For me, I absolutely love the sequel trilogy. The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi really resonate with me, and there's something that I connect with very, very strong. I enjoy watching, rewatching those movies over and over again. It brings me a great deal of contentment. But for a great number of people, it leaves a bad taste in a couple of ways. One is that what does it impact to the Return of the Jedi if Palpatine isn't dead, if Anakin isn't the chosen one, or that Luke isn't the chosen one? What has happened to all that story, and how does the sequel tie that in? I completely understand that, but again, for me, the sequel trilogy fits. It makes sense, and it resonates with me. So as we go into this movie, I would encourage that we engage with other fans. We try to understand people who have different opinions, and we do that without questioning their authenticity as a fan. Like, well, you're not a true fan if you like The Last Jedi because Luke's character was betrayed, and so on and so forth. Or you're not a true fan because the sequel trilogy obliterates the overarching story of Anakin and Palpatine. So I've been accused of those kind of things, or being a shill for Disney, as well as a lot of people are given really bad names for disliking the movies, for disliking the character of Rey, or disliking what's happened through this trilogy. So we shouldn't be putting down one another. We shouldn't be questioning the authenticity of your fandom, what it's meant to you in the past, and how it contributed to your life. For myself, I grew up with the original release of the original trilogy, and that's what holds most dear to my heart. But the sequel trilogy has brought back an intensity of a desire to reconnect with the franchise in a stronger way. I've always been a Star Wars fan. I've got Star Wars collectibles, and my family, my friends, the people that I've known over the years are very aware of this, and to somehow question my fandom or my authenticity as a fan doesn't help move the conversation forward, and it doesn't help the fan base as a whole. And so there's a movement out there now. It was started by the Den of Nerds, and it's called the Gray Order. It's a group of folks who may love or hate the sequel trilogy, but we have a desire to bring the fandom together. We have a desire to heal and to move forward as fans. Accept that there are things that you like, accept that there are things that you don't like, and come to terms with those, and continue to hold dear what has always been important to you in your fandom. So I'll wrap it up here, and I'll also put these bullets in the description so that you can read them there as well. Again, thanks so much, and I appreciate you being here. This is my very first video, and over time, I hope to introduce more of myself to you, to get to know you better, and to interact with folks through this channel. I've been active with the Den of Nerds. I've been active with Reimagining Star Wars, as well as many other channels and Discord servers. Support people who love the franchise and people who are very disappointed with The Last Jedi or angry with what's happened under Disney's control. So I have friends across the spectrum, and it's my desire to help pull those friends together and to just share our love for the franchise. Thanks so much again. It's great to have you here, and look forward to moving forward with all of you. Thanks so much. Merry Christmas.